It's Blathering Backstage. I have no idea what the hell is going to happen here. This is just a look back, a look behind the curtain, not at the show we do, the Blathering Live, but some of the conversations, some of the things that spring out of it, and some of our thoughts. And I have producer Steve with me, who has made Blathering Backstage a reality 2 times, both the YouTube channel that's now Blathering Gaming and now this show. How you doing, buddy?
Hey Ken, thanks for having me as always. Yeah, no, I'm excited that we're finally here, and doing something around this idea after I hijacked it for myself, ego-driven gaming streams. But
that's
we're having
exactly
fun.
what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to have conversations. Things come up on the show, and I'm always like, we should go in, and I have a wonderful time diving into topics with Alden on Anytime and Pat Conkey and Culture, Faith, and Politics. He and I always joke like that's a larger conversation. And that's an idea we might develop over there. But I was like, I do that here, and I just like having chats. And the Blathering Live is I bill it as a radio show, an AM radio show for modern era, which is horrible branding because no one knows what radio is anymore. But you do. And my big question I want to talk about and get to is a conversation I've had in real life that I've had with several different people. And all of us kind of in the same spot. We get there in different spots in different ways. And it's the question of is or has sports talk radio ruined everything? When I say that, do you have any reaction to that?
I have an emotional reaction of ouch at first, just because I have a
same because you and I grew up with it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I have a personal past with it. Sports talk radio was such a huge part of my childhood and my professional development, having worked at a local ESPN station as a young lad. It was a big, I have a soft spot for sports radio. I know all about all the different sports radio, big hosts of the late 90s, the OOs and everything, and the 10s, and the development of kind of how ESPN's culture of sports entertainment, other than live sports, really changed not just sports entertainment, but how we look at also, changed how CNN makes programs and stuff. You know what I mean? It really does.
Yeah.
And so, did it ruin everything? I think that's a little harsh. I will come to bat for sports radio, but I think a lot of sports entertainment personalities have watered down what I think a lot of us we used to love about sports, and I think some of the sports product and how serious we take it.
That's fascinating. That's interesting. Yeah, the influence is key, and you and I are sports fans, and I have this conversation with Mark Ellis, comedian extraordinaire. He's still a sports guy with me, and we still watch these kind of shows. But I've had periods of times where I just do not give a shit about any of this kind of sports media because I just want to watch the games.
Right.
But I guess what I mean by has it ruined everything? Because I have some folks who would say yes, and I kind of agree. You talked about its influence into other areas where now this is news attainment, sports attainment, movie attainment, and I was at the center of a lot of that, the explosion of digital media, movie chat worlds, and I'm not talking about specific shows or people, but I was there. But I will say I was specifically in meetings where people were like, we need to do what this ESPN show is. And I want to talk about one of those shows, which I think is the greatest show of all time. Pardon the interruption, but we'll get to that in a second. But then now it's the way we talk about politics. It's the way people look at things. It is the team, the team versus team kind of mentality. We in America are a zero-sum game country. And I think a lot of people, I've talked about it here on the channel, I think a lot of people take the bad lessons from sports. It's all about power and winning, and it's not about the journey. It's not the teamwork. But sports is also fun, and sports talk radio is still fun to me. And I think some of the best communicators have those backgrounds, even if they go into other things. And you grew up with that too, even though you're a little younger.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what's really happened with that is that it's that tribalism has just seeped into not just politics, but just life in general. Like music stands are a thing. Movie fandoms are going around ripping each other's necks on the internet. What was it? Night of the Seven Kingdoms had a big rating, and the Burbank Bad fans had to go and downvote it and stuff like that. Like that kind of team mentality, like that could be attributed to the Jim Romes and the Stephen A. Smiths and the Skip Baylesses yelling at the TV and on YouTube early on and all that kind of stuff that has influenced us to feel like we need to scream from the rooftops for not just our sports teams, but everything we feel passionate about, right? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if it's Star Wars, if it's Marvel, if it's Twilight, no matter what it is, like some
Right.
people feel like they need to, the sports tribalism, the sports beat your chest, wear the jersey, all that kind of stuff has seeped into these other kinds of fandoms and entertainment wanes, and we've seen that with I think a lot of the online interactions that folks have on social media and kind of going at each other. It's wild.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and this is where like I don't come down to the middle of this issue in this question. And by the way, the question of has sports talk radio ruined everything is very wide in general. You're talking about a lot of different influences, social media, society changes everything. But like, I look, yeah, you mentioned like CNN or the way they put shows out there. Like, I didn't watch a lot of CNN in the '80s growing up until something happened on the news. I think in my house we had. I mean, my parents did. Actually, no, my parents didn't turn on the evening news. I knew and watched Peter Jennings and Dan Rather and Tom Brokaw. I knew of them as a pop culture thing, but I didn't spend time with it. So, but I did spend time with sports talk radio after I became a sports fan. I got into radio, obviously, so I have a love of kind of the format. And I'm like you, I do kind of like ouch, babe, because I still think it's a fascinating way to approach talking about things
Yeah.
because it is entertaining. It is get the word out, but I don't know. Maybe as other people as other like the news now, CNN now has to go. All right, we have to have 4 people yelling at each other.
Right.
That NFL pregame show. We need that. Let's cast this person. Let's cast this person, and it is without a doubt entertainment. And then it spirals out, and now it's clips, it's TikToks, and it's reels, and then everyone's yelling. And the real stuff is maybe lost in it. I don't know. I don't. But you know what I mean when I'm defensive of sports talk radio as actually a pretty good format.
Well, yes, because it is unique in that it was really it came before social media in a way that
Right.
you didn't have like there was no avenue for if you were a huge Star Wars fan, Ken, in the 80s and 90s before like internet forums were like super popular or whatever. There wasn't really a talk radio show on the morning or the afternoon drive that was like call in and tell me about basically doing Force Center what you guys do now. Call in and
Right.
tell me about your favorite funny Star Wars moment, anything like that, right?
Yeah.
You had to do that with your friends in the playground, or you had to do that just run your social circles. With sports talk radio, you could drive home from the game pissed off because the Dolphins lost 21-3 to the Jets again, and well, not to the Jets, probably the Patriots.
Both.
and you could call up Zippy and
Yeah.
the Juice on the radio and be like, "Hey, I'm what the hell? Why does our center suck?" And then the guy, you'll have
Yeah.
some producer like me yell at you and tell you why, hey, you suck at
Yeah.
calling in, land the plane, and then that's it.
That's good. No, you're absolutely right. It is about communities. It's social media before social media, and coming from the pro wrestling both fandom and world, like the dirt sheets and all that kind of stuff, but the wrestling communities and wrestling forums and the tape trading communities and everything, like kind of the same thing. And then it kind of goes mainstream. And the reason I say it's like, I still think radio. And I defend it a lot, even though I know it's archaic and every once in a while someone makes fun of me and everything. Like, it's not just about the voice and the insincerity. I understand that. And that's what I love anytime Harry Shearer in a Wayne's World movie or anything parodies radio, morning radio. It's 100% accurate. Like Zippy and the Juice, those people, if they aren't real, they are. Like, and my morning show wasn't like that. But also, guess what? My morning show when I was a kid, I was like 20, 21 on the air having my morning show. Me and my partner, Matty D, like we did not want to be Zippy and the Juice. And we had a lot of other things, a little more comedy. And guess what? It didn't work. Right. They cut us.
Right.
They cut us because we didn't stick to the formula. And I'm okay with that as an artist, as an artiste, but that's part of the frustration too, but it works. The format works.
Yeah, but the format also changes, right? The format evolves with what people are doing. Because yes, sports radio, what you would think of as regular AM sports talk radio, like where you've got,
Right.
we've got weather on the nines, and I'm gonna, do an in and out every, 6 minutes, where I got to do a station identification, and we've got to do an ad read every 3.5 minutes, like all that kind of stuff. That archaic part of it is gone, but
Yeah.
podcasts are like the number one thing people are like interacting with their workouts, on their commutes, and like the way that we've kind of, as far as on-demand media goes, outside of streaming things like Netflix and stuff, people are consuming the the content, the thoughts, the ideas, the art, as you will. But we've just shifted the medium a little bit, as much to Howard Stern's chagrin as possible. But so that's just how it is, right? Because just the radio dial changed. We went from AM to FM to now we're just on the internet and worldwide, and the medium has changed a little bit, but what we're talking about isn't that different. And if it's expanded more, really, if anything.
Yeah, and it's about the personalities driving it, and that's not, if you're a fan of true crime, you probably are brand loyal to 2 or 3 shows because you're invested in their lives, they're invested in their banter, even if some of you don't like their banter. You're following the people after a while, I think, and that still comes from radio and sports talk radio as well. I get it when I look at the state of the world now. This is a state of the world conversation, Steve.
Is that the Brokaw voice? You do good Brokaw. I like your Brokaw voice.
Do I?
You do good Brokaw.
But I can only do Dana Carvey doing Brokaw. President Charles Ford is dead today. I'm Tom Brokaw. When I look at politics, I get sad that sports talk radio did that. When I look at the movie talk world, I get mad that sports talk radio did it. But sports talk radio. And we're using sports talk radio as a very general term,
right?
And I want to talk about the big ones like Jim Rome and Colin Cowherd. That you got Stern, you got the Rock Jocks, you have Mancow, all those things from the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s. Different conversation.
Yeah.
I'm talking about because that's sex, drugs, and rock and rolls. What that shows for those. It's Zippy and the Jews. But the sports always kind of went into that. But Rome and Cowherd, whether you like them or not. You get sucked into the universe, you get sucked into how they do things, and then you trust them, whether you should or not. I think especially Cowherd has pretty insightful moments for the real world beyond sports. So it made sense to be like, I like this guy's take on football. What is his take on the White House? So I can see, that's why I think it's okay for it to bleed into the stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Does that make any sense?
It makes total sense. I think it's funny with Cowherd example, because every time I think of Cowherd, I just imagine his direct audience is a 43-year-old divorced regional salesman who has 2 kids that he sees every other weekend. And that is 90% of who Colin Cowherd is talking to all the time. So if you listen to it through that lens, it's great. But he found a niche like that. And to be fair, that dude's a genius because he talks to himself for 4 hours a day. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, he does.
I mean, I think he has co-hosts now, but at least when he was on ESPN, anyone who hosts a solo show, folks, it's not easy to talk to yourself and like make it entertaining for 12 minutes, let alone 4 hours. Okay. So you have to have a little bit of that
5 days a week.
Right. You have to have a little bit of that egocentric kind of, I am the center of attention. I can hold court with a make-believe audience, essentially. But it's, you're right. And those guys were a different flavor. You also had Mike and Mike, right? On the other kind of side of the more vanilla chip, vanilla ice cream, plain potato chips. They were more happy-go-lucky, have the quarterbacks on Monday who won the games, all that kind of stuff. And it was less Cowherd and Rome were like asking questions that you see directly bleed into that early 2000s crossfire type of adversarial commentary show, right? Where you're like you said, you have to have 4 people on a table and you have to have a Scott Jennings for everybody to roll their eyes and be like, what the hell's wrong with you, kind of, right? And those guys kind of did that with sports in that they took positions that were, and I'm just kind of doing a history lesson, but it more is talking about like how it kind of makes the impact, right? But like taking that fan perspective and like trying to turn it on to like Cowherd at least would always relate everything to business, right? Everything was, if you go to your boss and you do this or how would you do that, right? Like, so using those analogies, but it humanized sports a lot, especially for a young person, like, growing up listening to that kind of stuff. It made it make sense and kind of made these people who were these giant millionaires and business people like human in a way. You know what I mean? Like I could be like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
That's the value of these communicators. And that's why it would make sense to take it to other spots. But you're right. As much as we would like to, CNN, I can't imagine them firing Scott Jennings, no matter what he says.
No, but
because the clips are golden. The clips are engagement farms.
Of course.
So, but what people would argue is, that's turned it into something that news doesn't need to be.
That's the nexus point, Ken. That's it. What is it? When did that happen? Like, what was it?
Yeah.
Was it Geraldo when his safe was empty? Was it when OJ stopped the Bronco? Like, at what point was it that the news, like, that we cared more about the sensationalism aspect of it than, oh my gosh, we have this amazing mechanism in which we can administer news to you 24/7.
I would love to dive into that more if we launch Blathering History, the channel.
We'll do a documentary series.
I would love, and this is open to anyone having an answer, whether you're watching later or you. Like, when I'm thinking of when do I, again, I'm younger. In high school, I wasn't as plugged in. I didn't get plugged into politics till 10 years ago because I felt there was something I should probably pay attention to. I'm a pop culture guy. I am kind of a personality broadcaster. Like, I love my baseball announcers and hosts, and I love Broke on Rat. So I would pay attention. So this is kind of, though, from that perspective, it's not an expert position. But talking about when did it change? When did news become a now here's a story to hey, you fuck not
right?
I think maybe it might have taken a big event, and that is in the year 2000. The election, the Gore Bush contested election. News became sport to me then. And we have the tragedy of 9/11 not too much longer after. That changes probably some things as well. But is that a possible starting point?
That's a really good call. I was going to say a little bit. I was going to say the Lewinsky-Clinton scandal, at least for my age, at least like as a kid, because that was when I was really just becoming aware of the world and the news and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I really, for the first time, saw old white people yelling at each other on the news about, the moralities of politics. So, that was it for me. But
and a lot of people might point to, the restriction being lifted on equal time.
Mm-hmm.
On, if your Sunday morning radio station had this candidate, you got to talk and I think that's more on the actual history of it and the rise of Rush Limbaugh. I think that's a great, almost don't want to talk about that guy. He's dead. No one remembers anyways. But I think those guys, came out of the morning, the 80s to me were the morning jock era.
Yeah.
And 90s was the Limbaugh era, but also this Jim Rome. I don't think people realize the power, the influence and power Jim Rome had in the mid to late 90s as a pop culture personality on sports talk radio. Was, I think, just as influential as some of the others. But I look at 2000 because Limbaugh was popular. You knew Limbaugh. I don't know how many people were listening to Limbaugh. I know his numbers were big, but the election, the Lewinsky thing is great, actually. But let's just look at that. Lewinsky into the election, then it's sport.
Yeah.
Then you're rooting for, and who's going to win with these hanging chads? And I think that blended. Let's bring on this expert to talk about hanging chads. And it could have been a departure point. Maybe. Yeah.
And then 9/11 happened, and there was this opportunity for national unity for a little while, and we kind of experienced that from 9/11 to I feel like Christmas of that year, and then the Diamondbacks winning the World Series kind of ruined that a little bit because it was against the Yankees. But anyway, I didn't mean to push that.
Baseball's not scripted. You can tell baseball's not scripted. Yankees would have won that year.
I tell that to everyone if any random stranger I talk to in a bar who's like, "Oh, sports are scripted. This is all fake." Blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, if any of this was fake, the Yankees would have won the World Series in 2001. Okay? Period. Yep. End of story. I don't want to talk about this anymore. But I think, I think it was I think that was we had that chance there. There was that chance. There was that opportunity when, Bush is standing with the firefighter on his arm, or damn it, we were that close. We were that close. Yeah. And then we, invaded Iraq, and it went way, 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 way downhill.
Freedom fries, everything. Later. It just, it was
and
good.
Then we were back at it. And then we had Crossfire and Jon Stewart going in school and Tucker Carlson. And that was, man, that was we've been replaying that clip for 20 years.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the end of the departure point. And so we're talking about politics, which I follow, but I don't know the inner workings of the shows and other people. We can come back to that about why it does kind of, ruin things. That's why the title works for me in that sense of the sports talk radio. Did sports talk radio ruin everything? Yeah. We can't talk about politics like we used to.
But I think without sports talk radio, without exactly what you said, without the popularity of the Jim Romes of the Cowherds, the Mike and Mikes, without the the
Olbermann for a while. Yeah.
Olbermann, yeah, that's good, but also kind of like the Sports Center model, and kind of
Yeah.
making sports cool, quote unquote, and hip, and for more directed at young people. I think
Hmm.
I think your cable news channel saw that, and that's kind of where they tried to borrow that Stuart Scott formula, which is what Jim Rome is doing, but on the radio, right? From a
Yeah.
being brash and being energetic and all that kind of stuff. Because before that, sports radio was it was just old white guys announcing baseball, strikes and balls. That's really what sports
Right.
radio was before that.
Argument.
So
Yeah.
I think that kind of
Mm.
energy found its way into news media, like your cable news
Hmm.
media. This is also around the time of the rise of reality TV, and it was all just like this crazy nucleus of look at me entertainment, right? And
Yeah.
sports,
Yeah.
and you can make the argument sports radio was one of the catalysts of this. It really was.
Yeah. No, this is why I love this conversation. It's probably ongoing, but yeah, the rise of reality TV around the same time, and the currency is yourself. It's your personal brand, and that's what happens with newscasters. That's I don't know if you call them newscasters anymore. It's like, do you watch Rachel Maddow or do you hate her? Do you like her to hate her? Like it's the news doesn't matter. She matters, right?
Right.
Even an old newsman like Wolf Blitzer kind of now has to be Wolf Blitzer. And you saw some old CNN guys, like Lou Dobbs and stuff, were just like the dudes talking finances and stuff like that. And suddenly I turned my back, and years later they're doing the same thing, and they're leaning in and they're getting their money, I guess. So that's the politics side of it. A lot of my agreement comes from working inside the movie chat world, like I mentioned. And this is where I would submit, I do think the approach ended up upsetting me and others, and I do think it affected how we take in art.
Yeah.
And I do think there was some danger in that, but I didn't always think that. The reason is because I was a sports fan, because I was a sports chat fan for the most part. Like I said, did I need to watch 9 guys before a football game telling me if the Dolphins are going to lose? Let's see if the Dolphins lose, and then you tell me after, maybe. I'd much rather watch Berman and Jackson give me highlights at NFL primetime, right? But so I was there in meetings. I was there in conversations with people going, yeah, all right, we need to develop this show. You get your the panel show, and you break it down, and then you guys, do topics, approach it, movie news, treat it like this, and treat the show as we all talk about it. Let's look at this format that works and bring it to this world. And I'll talk about some of the people that started that and why I think that was a smart idea. But then, I'm not blaming any listeners or the fans, but then it becomes this thing where, like, now it is a fight. Now it's a zero-sum game. It is right or wrong, like Last Jedi or don't like Last Jedi. And it's every conversation is now a round of movie fights, which, by the way, started with good spirit. Like, hey, let's just those things we do in the bar. And that's where I look at it and I felt it ruin it. Because that's art. Politics is just as important, if not more important, and I think it's kind of the same thing. But I'm rambling, sorry. But if you're at AfterBuzz, Maria Menounos' network with Kevin Undergaro, now her husband, and my buddy Phil Svitek helped get that off the ground, was a genius idea. We are in the era of golden age of television. Prestige TV is getting us all talking. Podcasts are here. We have this thing. What if we took the same? Let's break down that football game, and what if we break down this TV show? I think it was, and whether or not they were the first, it doesn't matter. But they were kind of the first that sprung up here in LA. They produced like 250 shows a week. It was a great spot for people to learn how to host. Other people have gone into big things from it. I had some time there. Schmoes had some time there, not underneath them, but in the building. And I think it's genius. I think that's the way it should have done. Because the format works, you know what I mean. But what happened after is the problem.
And I think there's still room for that too. I think there's still an appetite for that. I mean, I find in the communities that I participate in that there's still that desire for just wanting to have just that basic conversation about it without the without the debate aspect of it, right? Without feeling like we have to get to whether it's the debate aspect or like kind of like the leak community where they feel like they have to get every single piece of information, and we have to canonize. Right. And I don't mean from like the story perspective. I mean from like we have to signify everything is right or wrong all the time. Like that kind of taking the fun out of it and making it like a zero-sum game almost is not what that does, right? But you want to hear, and I think that's why people love listening to stuff like Force Center and Castaway Talk, is because they want to hear people talk about the shows that they enjoy and hear opinions from people that not only they feel are kind of on the same page as them and how they're enjoying the art, but also just, man, you don't hear people spend 30 minutes talking about, about The Last Jedi or about, the latest episode of The Night of the Seven Kingdoms outside of that space, right? And so that does scratch an itch, and that's important.
You said scratch an itch, and you have a different perspective on it. You went to school for journalism and had a job at radio, ESPN. You said ESPN radio station. But we met through you enjoying some of the shows I was on. So without kissing my ass on my shows, you're describing, I was going to kind of ask you this question, but you're describing, maybe you're answering the question before I could even ask it, of just like, how did it feel from the outside? Because I was kind of coming up with it. I'm not saying I was one of the group that created the stuff, but like 2012 is the first time maybe even 2011 is the first time I'm brought in to discuss Star Wars on a podcast like it's a radio show. It worked for you because you're a sports fan, or did it work because it just like, finally I can talk about Star Wars like in this way?
It sounds like a cop out, but it's both. Like I as a Star Wars fan and a sports fan, as a Star Wars fan and a lot of these fandom fans, like there's not a ton, at least back then. There's more crossover now, but there wasn't as much crossover back then, especially in the late '00s, early 2010s. And so the advent of because listening to sports radio all the time, working at a sports radio station, and then hearing and seeing these podcasts and these YouTube channels pop up of, oh, this person's just gonna talk about Revenge of the Sith for 45 minutes. Like that was just like an entirely new concept, unless you wanted to sit down and watch like the DVD commentary, right? So so that was really cool. And coming from the sports radio and the journalism world, you're kind of used to that production idea of, I'm going to take an idea, I'm going to hash it out with you, I'm going to share my ideas with you for 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you what my experience of the art was, so that I'm inviting you to share it with me, and then you give me your feedback, and let's go on this journey together, kind of thing. And so sports is kind of like that, just from a tribalism standpoint of, we both like the Eagles won, the Eagles lost, let's share misery, or let's share joy, because we want to experience both of those emotions, not by ourselves. Right. And these outlets, whether they were the talk shows, the YouTube channels, they allowed that for these pieces of art, whether it's like movies, TV shows, like you said, like kind of that dawn of prestige television there during that era, for that to like happen. And all of a sudden there were these fandom communities that weren't just in these arbitrary like forums and listservs from the late 90s. Right. So it's an interesting kind of like parlay, but I really felt like someone who came from like enjoying it, like having known a little bit how the sausage was made from the sports radio side of it, to me that, if anything, just elevated how much I enjoyed it, because I was like, it's like just kind of, a little bit how it happens and why, and kind of a lot of those people end up like you, again radio background, right? So it's a similar, it's just a similar style.
Yeah, no. And again, I keep saying like the format works, and what I mean by that is, like I mentioned, pardon the interruption, which I was trying to figure out when it launched. But 2000,
I want to say 90. Oh, was it? I thought it was 99, but maybe it was 2001.
Let's see. October 22nd, 2001.
Okay. There you go.
Wow, that's great. I thought it was a little earlier.
I thought it was 99, but 2001. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's crazy. So, Michael Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser, two Washington Post columnists, know each other, work together. They debate, they laugh, they joke, they know each other, and they deliver, as it's described, fast-paced sports debate in a 30-minute format. And the genius was the topics, the timer, and that kind of set, segments and all that kind of stuff. And Tony, Stat Boy coming at the end, Tony Reale, right?
Tony Reale. Oh yeah, one of my journalistic influences, Tony Reale. That's
Yeah,
like one of my one of my absolutely I wish that was one of the dudes I looked up to. I was like, I could do that job. You know, as a teenager,
he's
like
great.
I could
I
be
think he's
stat
great.
boy. Yeah, he's amazing.
One of the great things at ESPN. I know his run is fortunately over, but yeah. So I'm just setting it for those who aren't familiar with it. But these guys weren't always yelling at each other. And we look at what you and I are talking about are the people yelling.
Right,
and then we'll get a little bit maybe into the McAfees, and I don't even need to go into the Rogan sphere. It's a little different because of the format. But McAfee is a radio show, right? It's a podcast, but that's sports talk radio. But these guys weren't doing all the yell and scream. They would debate, but there was warmth and intelligence there. There was understanding and respect there. And there was also an eye on entertainment. Mm-hmm. And then the show with the timer just added some intensity that you as a viewer, I think, were pulled in for. It was a genius format. And I have been in conversations with people at some of these media companies. We need to do what Pardon the Interruption did, but we need to do it in the movie world. And I get that. That's why I hate saying that sports talk radio might have ruined everything, but it was just the reaction to it. And it had a big, but the show's great. You loved it too, right? You watched it?
A huge fan of PTI. Again, that was a huge influence of me wanting to get into sports journalism, sports broadcasting as a kid. And part of that formula is, Wilbon and Kornheiser were two of the best sports writers of the last 50 years. And so having those two guys, and the early iterations of the show were really kind of them just like, imagine just two, guys sitting at a bar kind of at breakfast, pulling out a newspaper, or at the end of the day, pulling out a newspaper and talking about like the front page of the sports section. Right. And then it kind of turned more into, as they became old, ornery men, they're just yelling at each other. And that's just kind of the reality of it. Right. I mean,
a little bit. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
So, but you're right. That formula has been, I've heard several people in my journalism career, both in college and in professional, saying that is the best media product on television, whether it's news, sports, talk, any of it.
And I say it because it I think did influence so much of what came after 2001. You got all this stuff happening. Whether we're right as historians of sports media that it's the election in 2000 and Lewinsky and Clinton scandal, whatever. Like I think, and then Limbaugh and all the things we talked about. But 2001, the show comes out, and the influence I think is felt everywhere. And I still think the format works. The energy works. It's more than the format; it's the energy. And so I was part of shows that they were entertaining. It was about personalities. It was about energy. I just think along the way, it kind of lessened the impact of the art that we were treating like sports and treating like business. And I've said this publicly, and I never want to drag him into the conversation, but Nick Mundy, if you all remember Nick Mundy from Screen Junkies, when he was there, Nick and I are still friends, love him to death. He was very vocal that this is all wrong. This is all wrong, and it's gonna have an effect. You're turning art into sports talk radio. You're talking about opening day weekends and who's, reshoot, all the stuff. He's like, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. What should matter is how it made you feel. Yeah, it's fun to talk about it for Batman and stuff, but like you've gone too far. And I used to argue with him, you're wrong because it's fun. It's wrong because, pardon the interruption, it's wrong because, hey, we're just doing what people did before. Now, years later, I think he was right. Whether it was that extreme, I don't know. Whether it should have been stopped immediately, I don't think so. It's impossible. But now I'm in this frustrating spot of being on Force Center and having thoughtful conversations about art. And people will occasionally, it doesn't happen anymore, but people will occasionally be like, you guys should yell some more at each other. You guys should disagree. You should bring on someone who disagrees. And it's like, if we were doing Pardon the Force, yes, but not. We're breaking down the art, discussing and that's where I was like, oh, I see what we've done.
I'm writing Pardon the Force.
I see what sports talk formula did.
Right. No, and it's the chasing the dragon, man. That's what gets the clicks. That's what gets the engagement. That's what people clip out. That's what gets shared on social media. People yelling at each other. People owning each other. you know,
Yeah, the owns.
people being able to look at a clip and saying that validates my Reddit comment, that validates my Twitter post, that validates my
Yes.
opinion about things, because
Hmm.
we all have a brand now, we all have a platform, we all
Hmm.
share this space in this virtual town hall in which the biggest people are the loudest based on what their audience reach is, and we're
Hmm.
all just kind of fighting for scraps here in the underbellies of the shoals
Yeah,
of the blue
the internet.
skies and the YouTubes and things like that. But
Oof. Yeah.
but it's again it's
Hmm.
I think we can point to sports talk radio and this kind of evolution of media as a, I don't know if like commoditization is the right word, but
Hmm.
it feels like it in the sense that the sports radio model was the easiest way to take something that was relatively boring and make it
Hmm.
palatable to people, right? Like politics, right?
Yes.
Like C-SPAN is left
Yes.
at the dance looking around like shit. I'm the only person who didn't get the memo apparently.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody
Yeah.
else is like having fun and doing lines in the bath. Fox News is like God knows what. CNN and MSNBC are
Who
doing
knows?
lines in the bathroom. Like everyone's
Yeah.
having a great time. C-SPAN's just standing in the
Hmm.
corner waiting for someone to ask her to dance. But all these other because they figured out this is what would make people actually want to watch this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's react. So what? Yeah. So we're not absolving the format or sports talk radio, but you're making me think of a conversation I had in around 2000, working graveyards, and this old Scottish guy I worked with. Um, I'll just say he had some opinions of the world that I don't want to repeat. But
good
I worked with
accent
them.
though. Like real.
Great accent. Great accent. Great accent. He was from Edinburgh. He just spent some time as a police officer in South Africa, and I'll just leave that there. So
Okay.
he had some
Enough said.
different opinions.
Enough
He had
said.
some different opinions on things.
Yeah.
But we were talking about it. He was like complaining, and this is we worked together 98 to like 2001 or two. I still know him. I still every once in a while talk to him. But so it's about, I'll say on average it's about 2000, right in that era we're talking about. And he was complaining. And he was like 54 at the time. He's like, all these news shows, all these fucking news shows they got. I won't even try to do the accent, but that was kind of it. It was kind of always entertaining to hear him talk. And he was just talking about the morning shows because we would get off work at 7 a.m. So we would turn on in the lobby Good Day LA and all these kind of things, which we're doing not sports talk radio, but it was the personality and it was the loud,
Yeah.
right? And he was one of those, like, the media is trying to play us against each other. And again, yeah, okay. But he go, you know what the best news show is on PBS? McNeil there. And I was just like, yeah, I'm sure it is. No one's watching it, Andy. Like, no one's watching it.
Right.
Of course. And now here, 25 years later, I'm like, I'm pretty proud of what we do in Force Center. No one's watching it compared to the other folks just putting Kathleen Kennedy red eyes thumbnails out there. So I get it, but yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right. It's how you have to survive
That's gonna be
if
our
you
next
want to
angle.
thrive.
That's gonna be our
Yeah,
next angle. Is we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this show that makes fun of the Kathleen Kennedy red-eyed. So you know how like Colbert was. We're gonna do the Colbert show of entertainment YouTube shows. Okay, we're gonna act super
Yes.
serious. Like everything is like everyone like just way over the top, right?
Yes.
And that's how
But-
that's how we'll conquer the next. That's how we'll conquer the next wave of the algorithm.
But here, would love to. Would love to have the money to hire you and some writers and to do a studio. Anyone wants to support, please. Okay, I'm desperate. I need it. I need the cash. Give it the cash. Do you think people would get it? This is a
Yes.
different conversation.
Well,
Parody, satire.
I think-
Is it dead?
I was gonna say I think about 30% of the country. I don't know if we can, but I do think because the fandoms have gone. I think because we've reached peak fandom. Okay, and I think that's why. I think with the 2019 kind of apex of all of the fandoms kind of just aligning at the same time between Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, all of those things having these huge climactic events around that time, and then COVID happened, and we all kind of went into like a lull, kind of like a dark times for a little while where we weren't all getting together and seeing things. I think like the fandoms themselves and the internet community, the interaction, the stuff we're talking about has become a little bit self-aware since then. And we've seen that, I think, with the scattering of social media, right? Where the left has gone to blue sky, the right and the lazy people have just stayed on Twitter. Instagram, TikTok, all these kind of things. Reddit is a whole other beast. And Reddit itself is very the echo chambery by definition, right? So I think I kind of think that idea does have legs from the fact that it's different, and I think both sides of the aisle. God, this sounds terrible. I think both sides of the aisle are a
Careful
little.
now.
I know. Bear with me. Alden is about to stab me in the back somewhere. I think both sides of the aisle have a little bit of an appetite for, let's just laugh at ourselves a little bit, right? You know what I mean? That idea, I don't know if not in the sense that the way that the right was not at all self-aware of the Colbert Show. I mean, I know some Republicans who were, who could laugh at it, but the idea that we can take you can make fun of the people who are these hyper leakers that get shit wrong every week, or talking about stuff and saying that Kathleen Kennedy is the doom of Western civilization, and we have a black Little Mermaid and that's the worst thing ever, all this kind of stuff, and just using that as a way of look how fucking crazy you all are for making this your identity, and your how you are shaping your because it is, at the end of the day, I guarantee you can. I mean, I don't guarantee. I'm not going to generalize too much.
Okay.
But I think the Venn diagram on the folks who are telling you that Disney is too woke and we shouldn't have female main characters and Kathleen Kennedy red eyes, I have an idea of who they voted for, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I like their chances, as Mark Ellis, my old friend, said in one of his punchlines. I like their chances. Yeah.
So, I don't know if that made sense.
All right, so you tell you what, you go launch a parody show.
Okay.
And tell me how it goes.
I will.
No, I would love, because what you're talking about now, it's just this is truly Blathering Backstage. We're having a business meeting. What you're talking about is a show that plays it straight in presenting its satire. And Colbert Report did, but it was also, I don't know. I know some people didn't know it was a joke. You're always gonna have that.
I think you have to make it a little over the top so that it is very much obvious. But at this, I don't know. I think because that whole world just came to a certain climax and now is kind of waiting for what that next wave looks like. That just makes me think that there's an appetite for that. That's all. Well,
okay. We'll pick that up in another episode.
You're right. This is just another production meeting. This is how we throw stuff at the wall. Yeah. Sometimes I have to say stuff out loud to really determine how dumb it sounds. So.
Well, it's on my mind because I am determined to continue to grow the Blathering, and thanks to anyone who's new and subscribing, and have fun going to live shows with call-ins, and you've come up with some great segments, and we're doing radio, and that's not for everyone, but I contend that there's a lot of folks who think it's not for them, that if they were to get invested in what the personalities, not just me, but you and our callers and everything, I think they'd be pulled into it in the same way it has pulled other people in, and I think it really can work. And there's other examples out there that are far bigger than me that I think it does work. But it's just on my mind because I'm I look at what's going on in the world, but I just look at everyone screaming and shouting because I have the reaction to where there's certain channels I'll watch, but political YouTube channels. But if I'm not in the mood to just watch them do their thing, which might be yell and insult some of the politicians I don't like, if I want to actually talk about solutions, I have to turn away from them, right? And that's where I'm it's now they're playing the characters.
Right.
It's now they have to feed that for the algorithm. And even though they're very successful, I want to do something more real, more organic, which is the Sports Talk morning show radio format. Not Snippy and the Juice. Or what do you call them? Zippy and the Juice?
Zippy and the Juice, yeah.
Zippy and the Juice.
Zippy and the Juice.
We could do that.
Yeah.
We could do that. I have sound effects. But it's been on my mind. It's an ongoing conversation. So we'll come back to it. We're looking to do the Blathering Backstage here, a little off the cuff kind of conversations about the things that kind of fuel and fall back into the show. What's the show? Hey, if you're just swinging through here because the headline grabbed you and you stuck to the end, subscribe to this YouTube channel, get the Blathering Live. and you also get it in podcast form. Other things here on the channel. It's the world o' Ken, I say, but it's also the world of producer Steve and others. Steve, I know you're tied up, but what's going on over the Blathering Gaming when it's running?
We've got a nice little rotation going over at Blathering Gaming, Ken. Thanks for asking. We're trying to get a few. We're trying to get a few more consistent streams going in there, but we have a nice, healthy rotation of games between some Zelda, some Star Wars, and a couple other fun little community games. So check us out, subscribe if you haven't, and just make sure just keep an eye out on Blue Sky and on the channel. I usually try to post when I go live, so give you a heads up. But we have fun over there. It's good. It's good time. Good second screen entertainment, as I like to call it.
Second screen entertainment is a good way. You got the formats down, buddy. You're a great producer. A lot of fun. All right, that's it. We'll see you next time, folks. Bye.